Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, GreyDMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
That's me.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, what price are you willing to pay?
Can I lose coupons?
Maybe. I don't know if there are infernal coupons, but I kind of think that might be a thing.
I feel like there would be.
Yeah, maybe like a 2-for-1 if you did something particularly egregious. I don't know. So tonight we've already gone past the point of talking about the 13 clans.
Mm-hmm.
So we are now going to start on some other topics that we can find interesting. And one of the ones that we got to clear up pretty soon is basically a bloodline that we've talked about multiple times.
Yes.
And we need to get some kind of explanation for, because
they demand explanation.
As they probably do too. We're going to talk tonight about the Bali.
Was that like tied to Bollywood?
I think we did that joke already. They're just really good at making really crappy movies.
Yeah. Crappy movies, I wouldn't go there.
Those fighting words, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the Bali are a bloodline that is not currently in V5. So when Cult of the Blood Gods, the book was being released, it was pitched that they'd put the Bali in there as basically some source material, and apparently the company fought back and were like, I don't know if we're ready for that.
Yeah. So they just didn't like the idea of infernal worshipping
I think
vampires.
I think with everything that has happened over the past 20 years as far as the social growth and how companies are a lot more sensitive to make sure that they don't get a bunch of people outraged at them, I don't think they were immediately ready to go do Infernalists and go throw that in there.
Wrong.
This is the wrong way. However,
we got to be inclusive. That means Infernalists.
Inclusivity. However, they're probably going to show up eventually in some form.
Right.
So we might as well turn to what our previous knowledge of them is and kind of bring them up and bring everybody up to speed on them so that we can all kind of understand how they played such an important part in other clans' histories.
Right.
Much as we've mentioned before when talking about various other clans, including most recently the Salubri, their history, the Bali, is going to be weird. It's not going to be really pinned down. There's going to be a lot of kind of guess or a lot of kind of supposition that we're going to talk about.
A lot of assumptions.
Oh, yeah. So just kind of be ready for that. Nothing we're saying is the deepest, darkest truth. These are just kind of the pieces that have been presented to us so far of who these wonderful kindred are. So, much like the other clans, we can talk about their nicknames. They're known as demons, devils, the unholy, and demon worshippers. Seems like it doesn't stray far from the point there.
No. I mean, it kind of seems like a one-trick pony, too.
Traditionally, in their disciplines, they have obfuscate, presence, and daemonion.
Onion?
Daemonion.
Oh, okay.
Which is like a mixture of demon and dominion.
Oh, someone got a little too creative.
Yeah. And another little point to clear up here is they are a bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might be asking yourself, what is the difference between a bloodline and a clan?
Hey, self, what's the difference between a bloodline and a clan?
Well, funny you should ask. A bloodline is a term used to describe a group of vampires who share a common lineage. While the term can be used to refer to vampires who share a sire, grandsire, or so on, it usually refers to those lineages that have some inherent distinction from the 13 traditional clans of Cain, be it in their weakness, disciplines, or both. Many of these bloodlines are, in effect, a clan within a clan. Now, in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, bloodlines are no longer presented as independent units outside of clans. Although all kindred either belong to an existing clan or are caitiff, and bloodlines are represented by unique backgrounds. So there is something in the mechanics of the game called a lore sheet, and there are bloodline lore sheets. So basically, you can buy into a group of merits and story points that will both benefit and hinder you. And some of these are like basically replacements for bloodlines. And some of them are kind of other things, like, for example, like you can be a childer of, not really a childer. You can be progeny, right?
Yeah.
You can be like progeny of Hartstad,
Mm.
in which case then you get a couple of different merits that are tied to basically you and your recognition throughout the Ventrue clan, but also like you inherit certain grudges that are going to affect you as you go on. The bloodlines are kind of played the same way. So a lot of the clans that we've talked about where we've mentioned specific bloodlines, you can some of these still buy in the game. And they may give you something like the chance to buy a certain discipline at a cheaper rate,
right,
or something, but then usually they have some sort of penalty or cost to it too.
Just basically just kind of refining your character.
Yep, thematically with a story purpose, and that way you can kind of give your character some flavor, give the blood a little amuse-bouche.
It's almost like races in D&D, but like you don't have to choose the race.
Yeah, because it very much background or ancestry in D&D kind of ties into this. Yeah, it's kind of the idea. So like you can have two people at the table that are gang rules, and one of them's a little bit different than the other one. And some of them are kind of unique. I think Nosferatu have access to actually getting the lore sheet for Nick Tuku.
Really? That would actually be kind of cool.
See? Yeah, there are always ideas.
Florida, here I comes.
So, if we've gathered today to talk about a bloodline, it has to be probably the most notorious of the bloodlines, the Bali. Also, it should be noted, too, that a clan can become a bloodline, because I think they refer to the Salubri now as a bloodline, not a clan.
Yeah.
So the Bali
There's just not enough of them.
Basically. As soon as their progenitor got eaten, they became a bloodline.
Right.
Okay. The Bali are a bloodline of vampires associated with demon worship. Go figure. Because of their affinity with the unholy, the Bali are particularly vulnerable to holy iconography, holy ground, and holy water. They are highly vulnerable to true faith. Some versions present the true purpose of the Bali as keeping demons sleeping by feeding them with carnage and destruction, but most presentations show them as infernalists, using demon worship to gain additional power. They have a somewhat complex heritage, appearing at times as a bloodline and at times as a clan. This is some indication that they may be a bloodline of the Salubri, Cappadocians, or Semisi, although one earlier source suggested that they may instead be descendants or even predecessors of the Gangrel line.
Oh, that's new.
They also recruit vampires from other clans to become Bali via dark thaumaturgic initiation, further confusing the issue and making them also a sect or cult.
So you don't necessarily have to be part of the bloodline. You can be like indoctrinated into it.
Some versions you can, yeah. So the origins of the Bali are shrouded in mystery and deceit. The version recorded to date are detailed in the version differences that we'll talk about later. What is certain is the Bali are among the few things that caused the 13 clans to put away their differences and unite against them in various Bali wars. It's got to be pretty, confident. Like, we're not a big deal, but like when our name gets dropped,
wars start.
The Ventrue and the Lasumber are just like shake hands.
Yeah.
Then you're like, what is that about?
I think I should be worried.
The Bali are rumored to have a stronghold in the ancient cultures of Mesopotamia and Phoenicia, masquerading as some of the myriads of the city gods to gain blood sacrifices for their dark masters. Bali influence in Carthage, which rose to a peak once Troy and Moloch became lovers and resulted in a massive sacrifice ceremonies and bloody abominations, was what spurred the Ventrue of Rome to action against the Bruja spies and led them to salt even the earth around the city in order to bind whatever horrors the Bali had awoken. Sounds like propaganda to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't that bad.
Many of the Bali, however, dispersed into Roman society, practicing their vile craft in various mystery cults. I don't know why I'm playing with it. Historically, the Assamites, followers of Set and Salubri, have fought wars against the Bali. The Salubri and Assamites in particular have a deep-seated hatred for the Bali. Some claim the Assamite warriors' current blood addiction can be traced to a curse leveled by the Bali. The Bali faced a series of attacks and counteroffensive from the Assamites, who raided their lairs and destroyed numerous Bali by exposing them to the sun. In the organ pit of Damascus.
Wait, like the instrument, right?
In the organ pit of Damascus.
Yeah, like,
however,
like organ pit.
Just a whole bunch of organs.
Yeah.
That probably hurt worse. Would be disturbing, but it probably hurt. However, the Bali met to gain revenge on the assassins for their persecution. With the aid of the demonic Dakani, They placed a curse on the warrior caste of the clan that filled them with a murderous hunger that could only be satiated via diablerie, thus tarnishing the clan's image from its previous position of warrior scholars into a bunch of cannibalistic murderers for hire. Although the Baali's numbers were diminished by the Al-Amin, many kindred were strengthened by Islam and Ashira, they managed to keep corrupt hold in the area.
I mean, that's pretty rough. You fight a war with someone and then they're just like, well, you beat us, but like, we're going to fuck you up for the rest of your existence.
Yeah, I think blood sorcery is kind of like that ultimate, like, guys, I'm taking my toys and going home.
Yeah.
Like, if the kids had the ability to be like, it's not fun. Yeah, you cheated. I'm going to go home. Oh, by the way, I'm going to curse you forever to be bad at math.
Well, it's that whole thing where it's like, we're going to fight. I know I can't win, but I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah, there's some, yeah. I don't know. Just stuff's not selling right.
So leave that in. That'd be the extras cut. Just us burping, farting, sneezing.
I have a collection. You're right. The advent of the monotheistic religions as major power players put the Baali in serious danger, given that most of these religions disbanded their cults and other covens for the infernal rites and exposed their depravity to the world. Bali in the medieval age, that didn't make sense. Bali in the medieval age were constantly on the run, hiding their practices and origin from other Cainites and dedicated to spreading corruption and disease. Many Bali prospered at the times of the Black Death, as many desperate victims turned to infernal powers in order to survive, and to further the services of their dark masters. The growing rise of scriptures over their practices, however, slowly took the powers to invoke demons out of the hands of the Bali, something many of the younger encouraged, while the elders regarded as foolish and dangerous. However, a surprising change in the bloodline came with the upstart Azaniel's bid for power and Moloch's child, Tanit, fall into torpor after an ambush. Tanit's grandchild, Sahar Hannibal, took over leadership of the Molochite line, rallying survivors of Azaniel's attack and going to war against the would-be Shaitan.
There's a lot of words there. I'm not sure how many I caught.
Would-be Shaitan. Interesting. Sahar Hannibal unified the Molochim hives, turning them into the Order of Moloch, and brought Azaniel and his brood down after a century of conflict, mystically binding them in the ruins of Shorazin. So the order went north after that, finding respite among the old clan Samichi, and recruiting many as members, but soon enough had to return to the duty they would come to set themselves, eradicating infernalism with extreme prejudice, knowing its potential to break the world. So even within the Bali, there was a group of them that decided basically that consorting with demons might not be the best deal.
I mean, we read the flyer, we thought, maybe it's not all that bad. Yeah, it was. We don't agree.
In the final nights, the Bali have proven that they are still around. The capture and destruction of the cabal of North American Infernalists and subsequent recovery of their blasphemous grimoires have brought to kindred attention a looming shadowy truth. The children of Baal were not wholly extinguished by the Inquisition, as was previously believed. As the Gehenna draws close, many foolish kindreds seek salvation from the thirsty antediluvians by making pacts with demonic entities, thus allowing the Bali to regain their strength slowly but steadily. I guess that makes sense. I mean, facing oblivion, that's when you start turning to like, hey, where's that crossroads demon? You were offering some things yesterday.
I less want to learn how to play the guitar, more want just eternal life.
Yeah, can you prevent me from being eaten by an angry Methuselah?
Yeah.
For the Order of Moloch, however, centuries of conflict with their infernalist kin has seen their resources stretched almost to the breaking point, with every member they lost in battle. While they had the most complete library in the world regarding the eldritch children of the outer dark, which are the orthodox Baali's duty to keep asleep, and infernalism in general, members were more difficult to replenish, and by modern nights they were nowhere near as numerous as the Baali infernalists. Then word came that the ruins of the city where the Baali founders had first embraced had been found, and that it now held something malevolent and powerful beyond human comprehension, waiting to be born onto an unsuspecting world.
Oh.
The order could not handle us alone. They needed assistance, and so they sought out the Tal Mara, believing them to be the only Cainite organization that would take the threat seriously and would perhaps listen to what the Baali warned of great danger. Fortunately, the Tal Mahara didn't listen and made common cause with the order, albeit after several safeguards were put in place to ensure the order's good behavior. So far, the alliance has proven a fruitful one.
What's in the cave?
Yeah. Sometimes just knowing something's about to wake is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's about to wake up. You don't want to know, but you want to stop it.
Never.
Oh, she's already awake. We know that. Culture. So the Baali are explorers first and foremost, students of the unknown, the unknowable, and the unspeakable. They will do almost anything and sacrifice almost anyone to gain access to occult mysteries. They squander the wealth they have accumulated, they make deals they cannot live up to, and they do so with no apology and no attempt at excuse. They are, however, not Faustian bargainers, although many of the Baali neonates fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, you get that idea that basically because they can pull from other clans, there are probably a lot of Tremere who, end up like going like, hey,
I could do a lot better.
In Russia, we summon infernals all the time. So they believe the world is doomed, and that the end times are nigh, and every sacrifice they make, every murder they incite is one more chink in the dam holding back the deluge of blood called Gehenna. If they have to die to break that dam, so be it. As such, the Baali can be considered a doomsday cult.
Mm.
Most Baali during the Dark Ages defined themselves after the first three of their kind. The Nergali, named after Nergal, often called orphans after Nergal's apparent disappearance after the First Baali War. The Molokim, named after Moloch, and obscure adherents of the unnamed third progenitor. Each branch has different outlooks on the infernal work. The Nergali favored more direct and blatant acts, like the introduction of mortal occultists into their ranks and the spread of demonology, while the Molokim were more secretive and often inserted themselves into vampiric and mortal society. The followers of the third progenitor have been too insular to be pinned down, but some believe the tenets of the insectoid avatars of the swarm and the Via Hieron stem from the third progenitor.
So are we talking about 40K or are we talking about
right?
vampire?
Like it's getting kind of weird. There's a lot of like the Baali start pulling in other franchises together.
Tyranids show up. We've got freaking chaos demons over here.
Well, I mean,
Nurgle's here.
A four-armed vampire shows up and starts talking about the rock coming from heaven that's going to save everybody.
Just want to know when the orcs go.
Other sects within the bloodlines represent the different outlooks on the mission of the Baali line. So they're destroyers, often derided as mindless maniacs. The destroyers seek to reduce creation back to the infinite darkness that was before God created light. Probably friends of the Setites.
Maybe.
Celestials. These Baali seek to unravel the secrets of the cosmos and achieve apotheosis. Children of Enigma. The children of Enigma are another more scholarly band who seek the ultimate secrets of the universe. Avatar of the Swarm. In contrast to the previous sects, the Swarm has a decidedly more alien view of the world, seeing every mortal as a means to propagate the swarm. They have a primal link to insects and other vermin, often filling their undead bodies with multitudes of them and using their ghouled vermin servants as a means to draw mortals into the swarm. They also entertain a small branch of Cainite heresy named the Swarm of Samiel.
Ew.
That kind of screwed up.
Gross.
Yeah. So that was Constantine, right? Where like he has the swarm demon.
Mm-hmm.
And it like comes together. Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
I don't like that one.
Embraces. The Baali usually only embrace those who are intelligent and driven. Most who are embraced in the clan Baali had interest in the occult during their mortal lives. The embracing ritual of the Baali is one of their more disturbing rituals.
Oh, after everything else we've heard, this is the disturbing ritual. Okay.
A Baali will capture his or her prey and bring them or her to a site he or she has prepared. There will be a large pit filled with dozens of decomposing bodies. The Baali drains his or her victim to near death and tosses him or her into the pit. In just one of the corpses, the body hid their blood inside one of the corpse's hearts. If the victim manages to find the heart before they die and drink the blood, they are considered worthy of becoming Baali. Ironically, this means Baali are the only clan that regularly gives their victims the choice of becoming a vampire or choosing to die.
I mean, Is that better?
I'm going to give you a choice I never had.
Become a monster or die.
Getting warmer.
God.
I can't
Not
move.
that one.
Oh, you're getting colder. Oh, you're going to be so angry when you see where it is. One particularly infamous organ pit was found in Damascus where it was tended by the Methuselah Nazir. So there we go, back to that one. Organization. All Baali have at least two identities, if not more. Among their own kind, they organize into small, tightly knit groups called covens, usually in 3 or 6. These covens meet only rarely, gathering only to perform some dark ritual or discuss matters of dire consequence. They prefer to meet under the new moon, through lunar eclipses hold great meaning for them and major rituals are performed at that time. Covens meet in secret places where their activities will not be disturbed, yet still within the city they wish to prepare. Older editions suggest they frequently allied with black spiral dancers and make use of their tainted cairns, although such crossovers are less common in later editions. A black ritual involving both Baali and black spirals usually portends some great awful occurrence. These meetings are few and far between, however. Black spiral dancers was a tribe of werewolves.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was like a techno group.
And black spiral dancers are pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In the interim, Bali usually pose as upstanding members of either the Camarilla, Sabbat, or both, depending on who controls the city. Contrary to popular belief, they do not pose as caitiff. Caitiff are distrusted enough on general principle alone. Instead, they are far more devious, hiding behind a mask of blood passed down through the millennia. They pose as Tremere. The blood of Salute runs through Tremere's veins since his diablerie close to 1,000 years ago. Now almost all Tremere are descended from their founder, and therefore from Salute himself.
Mm-hmm.
Only those with a high proficiency in thaumaturgy can detect even a slight difference, and even then is usually dismissed as a minor change in the blood chemistry. Perhaps the vampire sire was of House Bonasagus, or Flambeau, or an Infernalist.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess they do pose as the Tremere.
Yeah. I mean, they basically are Tremere.
Well, so among the Tremere, reports of corruption deep within the Tremere hierarchy are scoffed at. Surely the Tremere, the masters of deception and manipulation, would know of a conspiracy within their ranks. But this convention wisdom is wrong. With the immense occult resources of the Tremere, the Baali are gaining strength like never before. They have access to supplies, knowledge, and potential recruits. They have even started 2 secret orders within the clan, the Order of the Worm and the Illuminated Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
The Order of the Worm is the most mainstream of the 2, the conservative front for the more radical Brotherhood. Through the Order, the Baali hope to attract Tremere who share some of their beliefs, who have their potential to be recruited, corrupted, or both. Once an applicant has progressed high enough in the Order, they are inducted into the Illuminated Brotherhood. Only after their corruption is complete, their turn to evil assured, do the Tremere meet their Baali masters and the masters' masters.
Mm-hmm.
In the Sabbat Baali have an easier task in some ways and harder in others. While the vampires of the Sabbat have forsaken humanity, the Inquisition within the sect limits their activities. Despite this, the Sabbat regent Melinda Galbraith was enthralled to Shaitan Nergal in Mexico City until her disappearance. Whatever sect they belong to, however, the Baali are united in their cause. Their eventual goal is to turn both the Camarilla and Sabbat to their infernal masters, and if that does not work, to destroy them. Indeed, many Sabbat-Camarilla conflicts can be attributed to the machinations of the Baali on both sides, destroying those who oppose them while garnering greater influence and power. After all, power is the name of the game.
I mean, it really just sounds like they're kind of trying to copy the Setites.
Yeah, I think they're just like, oh, but if we started to flesh out the Setites and turn them into a playable race, who's going to replace them?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, why not also do some of the horror stuff of the Zemisi? And, apostates. The Baali recruit vampires from other clans into their ranks. Such a successful recruited vampire is called an apostate. The Baali even have a dark thaumaturgic ritual commonly called the Rite of Apostasy, which proves the recruit's loyalty to the Baali and grants the recruit the demonic discipline of Daemonian. In place of one of their former clan disciplines. Effectively, there is a unique Baali bloodline for every clan or bloodline who has had a former member undergo the rite of apostasy.
That's kind of cool.
Their dark thaumaturgic ritual grants the Baali a viral property to literally grow their ranks that no other clan or bloodline is known to possess. The most populous bloodline of apostates are the Lusumbra, known as the Angelus Otter. So, you might think the Baali have a kind of a unified history here, but yeah, let's talk about all the weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, none of that up to this point was weird.
So here's all the differences. The Baali, like I said, are one of those things that has gone through the different editions and changed radically to the point where they kind of don't exist right now. In their first appearance in the original Vampire Storyteller's Handbook, the Baali were given no particular origin or motivation beyond demon worship. They're just straight up demon worshippers. Later, the crossover chronicle The Chaos Factor introduced the Methuselah Shaitan, who supposedly had founded the Baali bloodline. According to that book, Shaitan was embraced in the second city around 4500 BCE by Ashur. The history of Shaitan presented in that book implies that all of Ashur's children in the second city were ultimately outcast and became the progenitors of the Baali bloodline, with Ashur's child Enoa being the only one who was not corrupted. The Gangrel clan was actually a bloodline that branched off of Ashurians, as opposed to having a direct antediluvian ancestor. If you remember, Enoa was the Gangrel-like progenitor.
Yeah.
The backstory also implies that the entirety of the Baali bloodline descends from 13 separate Methuselahs, each of whom sold their soul to the demon Baal. However, many elements of the Chaos Factor were retconned in later editions of the game, since it was considered by fans to be an unpopular sourcebook that promoted thematically inappropriate crossovers and munchkinism, like Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand.
People are having too much fun being.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's more of like, it just kind of, there's a lot of gotcha.
Yeah.
Subsequent Vampire. The Dark Ages books presented a more complex and ambiguous history for the Baali. In several books, Ashur is considered to be another name for Cappadocius, although it remains unclear if Ashur was in fact the original sire of the Baali. The Dark Ages Companion presents a history for the Baali in which Shaitan was the most beautiful member of the fourth generation, but was not embraced as a Baali. Instead, he became the first Baali when he made a pact with Baal out of jealousy towards the Toreador antediluvian. Although this tale of the origin of Shaitan is contradicted by later books, the other parts of this account which describe the Baali war between the Baali and the 13 clans are reinforced by later sources. So then they actually got their own book called Clan Book Baali. Baali represents the rumor of Cappadocius called Ashur siring the Baali, and adds more such as Salute being the Baali's sire, but alters the details of who the first Baali actually were. Here, Shaitan is the name of the Baali that the Baali know their antediluvian progenitor by. The first three Baali were the childer of Shaitan. They were Nergal, Moloch, and the Unnamed, who some Baali variously believe may have been a female, Zilla, Lilith, or the Crown, and who may have been the founder of the inhuman Vaihiran, Path of the Hive. The Shaitan who appear in the Baali War and in the Chaos Factor is actually Nergal masquerading as Shaitan. As detailed in Clan Book Baali, the Baali acted to placate the children. This is kind of why we're going through all this stuff. Slumbering eldritch beings that may be demons, gods, neverborn, or worse.
Okay.
By appeasing them with sacrifices and chaos. The Gehenna sourcebook hints that the Baali might have been guarding antediluvians who are hardly distinguishable from chthonic deities or demons, and Clan Book Baali describes how one of these so-called children was excavated by accident and perished from the sunlight. That must suck.
Yeah.
You're like an antediluvian, like a god vampire, and someone's just like, hey,
open that up.
Hey, get that back over there and start digging. Oh, that's on fire. That's weird. Clan Book Baali also clarifies that Baal is not the name of any particular demon, but is a title meaning lord that is applied to demons who the Baali serve. Although more ignorant Baali childers sometimes fall prey to their own propaganda and actually believe that the bloodline venerates a single demonic master named Baal. Clan Book Salubri says that Ashur, or Shaitan, who embraced the first three Baali, was in fact Salute, the Salubri antediluvian, although this is far from common knowledge. That's kind of one of the things we touched on.
Right, we talked about that.
Vampire the Masquerade supplements shy away from the firm details. For example, the Vampire Storyteller's Handbook Revised presents an enigmatic origin involving a dalliance with a lowborn sibling slave boy. However, Gehenna treats Salute's creation of the Baali, in fact, in at least one scenario, so does the Gehenna novel. The Black Hand, a guide to Tal Mahara, draws on multiple previous versions of the Bali origins. Lore keepers of the Tal Mahara hold that Ashur brought a childer back to the second city, a boy of exceeding beauty rescued from a tribe of demon worshippers. Some stories say it was this child who spread corruption amongst the third generation and caused the downfall of the second city. Others thought it was Salute, although still there is a nameless member of the third generation that perishes in the second city. The Bali themselves tell a story much like the one in Clanbook Bali, though the third Bali progenitor is rumored to have been male, female, both, or the slave boy Ashur rescued. One possibility raised is that there might have been 4 Bali progenitors: Nergal, Balak, the unnamed, and the slave boy. Some parts of the Black Hand suggest the Tzimisce antediluvian was the Bali's sire, describing what looks to be the Bali origin from the sire's side. The book claims that the eldest used the knowledge it gained from the encounter to bind Cupola to its will and identifies the old clan Tzimisce as the Bali's cousins. So yeah, flesh crafters and infernalists.
Yeah.
Seem like the best cousins.
Right. Let's just hope they don't start cousin kissing and making a combination bloodline.
I mean, how long would those two have to be in the same room before one of them goes, "Oh my God, you put my peanut butter in my chocolate. You put your chocolate in my peanut butter."
Oh, God.
And then goats start talking.
The goats walking on 2 legs, breathing fire.
So let's go back to this concept of the children. This is kind of the last thing, because this is what I thought was kind of interesting. In their perspective, the children were beings who predated the current universe, or at least the light that God created in Genesis, who are destroyed by sunlight in at least one case, and who slumber in tombs in the earth until awakened. Lord of the Bloodlines describes the children as the first people, remnants of a previous creations of God before humanity. Here, Nergal and Moloch were already embraced when they stumbled upon the burial sites and re-embraced themselves as the first Bali. The Black Hand Guide to Tal Mahara also goes into greater detail on the children. They exist in a state of physical and psychic separation and imprisonment. Their flesh exists in the material realm, embedded in the substance of the earth itself in tombs that show no sign of construction and that have walls etched with the scars of their thrashing. In this way, they superficially resemble the earthbound. Their minds, however, exist somewhere else in a sea of tormented horror that is to them sweet bliss, which more closely resembles eldritch beings like the Neverborn, Formians, or Outer Lords.
So we're getting into some Lovecraftian stuff now.
Yeah. Should some event encourage one of the children to awaken, their minds and bodies come closer to union, realizing their unclean knowledge into the world around them. The essence of their nature spills over into all sapient minds in the vicinity, driving them to greater and greater acts of depravity, and reality warps and twists to the breaking point.
Is that what happened in Chicago?
The children do not appear to be earthbound, as the earthbound are aware, cognizant, and active, while the children are quiescent, sleeping. There are, however, certain parallels with the Neverborn Malfeans and with the eldritch beings called Lords of the Outer Dark by Nefandi mages, which may themselves be aspects of the worm or created from the dreams of the Neverborn, according to the Book of the Fallen. It is likely that the true nature of the children has been intentionally left vague so that tables can use them however they wish to do. As he said in V5, Cult of the Blood Gods had the Bali considered being included to the book at one point, but that decision was vetoed by Paradox. Right?
Yeah. Figures. Bunch of wusses over there.
I don't want a little Cthulhu in my body horror vampire stuff. Punk horror. So there's some more speculation. According to some readings which overemphasize the Bali and Lasumbra's shared interest in the Abyss and the shadowy demons therein, the Lasumbra antediluvian might also be the true progenitor of the Bali bloodline. This theory is not supported anywhere in canon, however, and ignores the most prevalent claim that Salute sired the Bali. Having the Bali be a bloodline of Lasumbra would make the Azanili bloodline simply a vestige of the Lasumbra roots, although it would not explain why the majority of the bloodline remains distinct from Lasumbra and instead worship Malfean-like being. A newer theory, gaining traction since the new guide to the Black Hand was published, is that the Bali may have had multiple progenitors. Salute, Tzimisce, and perhaps even Hakim. Oh, that's a total betrayal. In this theory, it is the well at Ashur itself that creates the Bali and not any one clan founder.
Clown flounder?
Man, getting to the end of this one, you can feel the mouth mush coming in.
Mm-hmm.
One of the arguments for this theory is that Shulgi, an Assamite Methuselah who is able to break the Tremere curse, has a similar origin story to Shaitan, or the slave boy, and like Shaitan, is a formidable blood sorcerer. Shulgi was created during the Bali War and is hinted to be something less or more than human. That Shulgi could not, or perhaps would not, strip the Assamites of the Bali curse suggests that Shulgi's loyalties may not lie with Hakim.
Mm.
One suggestion is that Shulgi was either spawned from the same tribe of mortals as the Bali founders, or may itself be one of the Bali founders. That Shulgi's childer, Al-Shrad, is a member of the Assamite sorcerer caste, would argue against the Methuselah being of the known Bali bloodline, although Al-Ashrad is noted for his pale skin unique among the Assamites, which remains unexplained, but does not rule out being an apostate or fellow traveler.
A lot going on there.
Yeah. So, all right, if you're still listening to all that kind of chaos, what do you need to know about the Bali, right? They're demon worshippers. They're a bloodline that could be composed of
anything.
Yeah. They have like heavily thematic connection with the Tremere. In fact, a lot of times they're like, that's who they're either going to pull from or that's who they're going to hide from.
Yeah.
Definitely when they show up, other clans tend to kind of start shaking hands and go to war.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may
for good reason.
They may also be doing the good work and keeping the children asleep, which are horrible eldritch beings that will twist reality into some nightmare dimension.
Who's to say?
My God, Raziel, they held it, you know?
That's awesome.
But yeah, like it's just, I think as they kind of said, for the most part, like, I don't think any of the writers are ever going to basically come out and say like who the Bali need to be.
No, it's always going to be like this mystery, this twisted maze of turning back on itself.
Much like the Seven and other things, they're meant to kind of be boogeymen.
Yep.
Occasionally you're going to have that intrepid player who's like, I want a little bit of that. Right. You know, maybe explore some of it. But really, they are kind of one of the foremost villainous sources that you can safely leave as a villainous source.
Yeah. Not really sure they could ever be anything but the villain.
So how'd you survive your embrace? Oh my gosh, like, he took me to my artist gallery and then he kind of scared me and took my blood. What about you? It was like, oh, that was crazy. Like, it was kind of painful and he dragged me down, but he told me everything would be okay. What about you? It's like, oh, I was thrown in a pit with a bunch of dead bodies. There are 3 other of us and I found the heart. I guess it's the world's worst flesh-crafted crane game. But I guess if that's how you survive it, you'd probably have some views on how the world works.
Yeah, and those views are probably pretty twisted.
So, what do you think of final thoughts on the Bali?
I mean, I don't know, because literally there's a little bit of almost every vampire clan mixed in there, like all the worst parts. And then demon, infernal worship thrown on top. So it's like I don't know, they just kind of feel like the catch-all to me. Like, because you have the whole corruption thing, that's the Sedite thing. You have the whole darkness and void thing, that's the Sombra thing, you just, I don't know. It just feels like it's kind of a mix of a lot of different stuff. And I don't know what came first, when you really go back into like White Wolf and even before that, like what came first? Was it the Bali and then all these other clans were just things that they're like, well, I like this aspect, so let's make a clan about that. Or is it just like, hey, we need to make a new boogeyman and, well, we like this about this clan. We like this about this clan. Let's just all kind of pull all that together and throw it in there.
Yeah, I think a large portion of what you're kind of describing probably came from writers deciding that the Bali came from a source, but not saying it.
Right.
And then they inherited that stuff.
Yeah.
Because clearly with like the distinction of like having different groups within them kind of being like the destroyers and like that's very mirroring the Assamites.
Right.
And like, it would be delicious lore to be like, oh, the Assamites who like are hell-bent on exterminating you from reality were like your progenitor. So you can tell like some author probably decided that was pretty cool. But then like I said, there's the whole connection to Tremere and Salute. Like that's a big thing. And then like, the clan Salubri basically come out and saying like, oh yeah, our sire probably went over there and did that.
Yeah, and it's just like, why did he do that? You know,
He was kind of crazy. He was looking for the third eye. You know, we didn't say all his greatest hits were bangers. Okay, there's a couple B tracks on there.
I mean, he might be the only antediluvian that's created 2 bloodlines or 2 clans.
3.
Yeah, true.
In
I mean, technically,
different ways.
Yes.
He gets around.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap up probably the most enigmatic and confusing of all the bloodlines. So hopefully this fills in some gaps and opened our eyes to some of the other things we had talked about before. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later.
Goodbye.